Are you tired of melee influence? I'm going to take a wild guess and say that you are, because honestly, who isn't these days? But in that case though, you are going to be very happy that you clicked on this video, because this is a melee that is utterly broken and doesn't use influence, and is actually really cool. Let me introduce to you the Harmony, which is one of Jade's 3 signature weapons and is easily the best of the 3. Now, if we ignore the special trait that this melee has, which makes it, so very good, it is just, a scythe, and scythes are fine weapons. There is nothing too special about them, and if this was all that Harmony was, I mean, obviously I have 0 mods on it right now, but it would be an okay weapon. But there is a very unique thing here, and that is its unique trait of harmonic resonance. The first sentence here states that heavy attacks condense all status effects that deal damage over time into a single instance. Now, what does this mean? Well, if you are familiar with the ability Expedite Suffering, this might sound familiar to you. And to put it simply, if there are any damaging status effects like Heat, Toxin, Blast, all those on an enemy and you heavy attack them with Harmony, you will condense them all into one single damage instance. Notice how all the DOTs just immediately disappeared off this enemy. If I get a couple of them back, you see I have a lot of heat right now. Boom. And remember, I have 0 mods on my Harmony, and we're actually doing, decent damage here. We actually just killed the enemy. To explain more mathematically, this passive will take all of the existing dots on an enemy and make them instantly deal the sum of all damage they would do during their lifetime, while removing them simultaneously. Simply put, this means that if an enemy were to have 5 slash procs on them that would deal 100 damage over their 6-second lifespan, heavy attacking them would cause those 5 slash procs to immediately deal 500 damage in total instead of having to wait 6 seconds for it to be dealt. And that is obviously very good. And this is actually benefited by the fact that scythes like Harmony will automatically apply slash on their heavy attacks. If I go over to Fading Hope right here, you will see that it has a 600% multiplier and a forced slash proc on both swings. And importantly, the part of harmonic resonance that, condenses all DOTs down will apply to effects that are triggered on the swing that applies them. So with this enemy back in here, just, doing a heavy attack, and yeah, we almost outright killed this enemy. 1.1 million right there. Now I do have, a build on my Harmony now, but as you can see, this is obviously very good. Yeah, one shot, 13 million damage right there. But it gets even better, and it is all due to melee afflictions. Melee afflictions states that enemies affected by status effects gain 6 additional stacks when they are knocked down or flung by melee attacks. Now what does this mean? Because at face value, it just sounds like, if an enemy has slash and then you knock them down, they're then going to end up with 7 slash and the damage would, be a little bit higher, but not that crazy. But no. This is probably the highest damage boosting arcane in the entire game in terms of raw damage. Sure, there are things like melee influence, which will spread your damage to like an entire tile set, but influence doesn't do overkill damage, whereas melee afflictions does ridiculous amounts of overkill damage. Before they changed Harmony a couple of patches ago, it was very easy to hit damage cap with this weapon, and while you can no longer do it, you're still one-shotting virtually every enemy in the game. And let me explain why. I have swapped over to a different weapon to demonstrate just because Harmony is way too powerful. We are on the Hate now, but this is also a scythe, so the same principles apply here. We just don't have the condensing effect that Harmony's heavy attacks give. But right now, with melee afflictions active, you can see that doing a heavy attack will leave the enemy with 7 slash procs. And that is because we obviously have the forced one from the heavy, and then we are knocking them down with said heavy, which applies 6 more. But if I actually explain the, calculations behind this arcane, it just gets ridiculous. Firstly, faction damage mods like Prime Smite Orkin, Grunier Infested, and whatever, and the Elementalist mod scale exponentially with this arcane. This is because you will first find the modded base damage, or MBD, of every status on an enemy, which is then used to calculate the average status effect damage, which is the sum of all MBDs divided by the number of procs. The damage from afflictions is then said sum multiplied by faction damage, which is then used to calculate the dot effect that will include faction damage again and the Elementalist mod. I will have the wiki link down below if you want a more comprehensive look at all the math behind this, or you could go watch my Kalervo video where this was all explained because Kalervo and Harmony is just kind of broken. But regardless, you now need to remember that all that stuff that Afflictions is doing, Harmony will take all of that, which is 7 slash procs with exponential faction damage scaling, and it will condense it into one massively damaging hit. And it means with a build like this, you can run up to an Eximus unit, a level 185 Steel Path Heavy Gunner with no external buffs, and one-shot them. 92 million damage. Did you see that? We just hit an enemy for 92 million. And we have no priming, we have no like roar or wrathful advance or anything like that. You might be asking, how is this working on Xmas? Because you need to knock down enemies. But for whatever reason, if it is a forced knockdown, even if it doesn't actually apply, you will still have all the benefits of afflictions. 665 million right there. We almost just hit 1 billion damage without any priming. What the hell? Before we get to the actual Harmony build, the reason that I am on Rhino is because, like I said before, faction damage scales exponentially on melee afflictions, which makes Roar possibly the best buff that you could give it, and Rhino has Roar in his base kit, and it is doubly as strong as every other Warframe. So it does make Rhino the best frame to abuse this melee, because 150% more faction damage would have taken that 665 million that we just hit on that enemy and turned it into essentially over 1 billion, possibly even hitting damage cap. But if you just want to use Harmony on literally any Warframe, here's the build that you want to use. Prime Pressure Point could be swapped out for Condition Overload if you are going to be doing any external priming with a, primer like the Epitaph or a companion like Dariga, but I just have, Pressure Point in there right now because it does not require that. Bane mod, obviously, because this build is specifically not going to be using any external buffs. Galvanized Reflex gives us initial combo, and initial combo is great for heavy attack builds because it just multiplies your heavy attack damage by that number that you see in the bottom right there. So right now at 2x, we just get a double to our heavy attack damage, but if I actually go and get some kills, you will see that with this mod, we stack all the way up to 6x, and that is obviously very good. 6 times the damage on our heavies is very strong. Lasting Sting probably seems like a weird choice, as there is literally no other case in the game where you would want to use this mod, but status duration is one of the best possible stats we could get here, and it is because of how DOTs work in general. If a slash tick lasts longer, obviously it will deal more damage because now instead of lasting 6 seconds, it is going to last like 12.5 seconds. And because Harmony is going to condense all the damage that it would deal over its now 12-second lifespan into a single hit, adding practically double the amount of time will double the damage from our slash. And then, because we now have 7 slash from melee afflictions, it's like, this is one of the biggest damage boosts that we could get. Galvanized Steel is more critical chance and more crit damage. Same with Amalgam Organ Shatter, but this one also gives us more heavy attack windup speed, which you're going to heavily appreciate. Primed Reach is comfort because the, base range of 2.6 meters is just not long at all. So you pretty much need this mod to not feel like you need to be in enemies' faces to hit them. And then Elementalist is our status damage and more heavy attack windup speed. Do remember that this does scale exponentially with afflictions, so it is very, very strong here. Dispatch Overdrive just gives us more movement speed because we are on a melee build, so getting from enemy to enemy a little bit quicker does make it feel a lot more fluid. There is no reason to really use any Tennokai here because you're not using any light attacks, you are just going around and spamming heavies as much as possible. And like I showed you before, this build is obviously very, very good, like these enemies just get absolutely dumpstered, and these are Xmas. Like you don't encounter these like 584 million. But like I said, these are not the enemies that you're going to be finding like down every corner. You're going to be encountering groups of significantly weaker enemies. And in that case, with these guys, they don't even have enough HP for us to hit damage cap on them because like they'll just die beforehand. Like I'm pretty sure they just die from the initial swing and not even the, whole melee afflictions bullshit. But if you want this build to be as strong as it could possibly be, you're going to want to use it with Roar and with Wrathful Advance, which makes the build look like this. And that is why I am on Rhino with Wrathful over my 1, and then obviously Roar with a massive faction damage bonus. Now we also have Condition Overload here, so some priming. Get these enemies primed up, and the damage might not look any higher. But trust me, but if I went into my log file, you would see we're hitting damage that is so obnoxiously high, the game doesn't even display it right, because these enemies just don't have enough health. Like if there was an enemy that you could only kill if you dealt 2 billion damage to, you would kill them with this melee. Like maximum priming on all these guys right now. I don't even have Wrathful active. Yeah, like, it's insane. The only difference here is that we are using Primed Fury instead of a faction mod, and this is because attack speed, while you might not assume that it does affect heavies, because why would you, it actually will affect the animation after you complete a heavy attack swing, and it does make them significantly faster. I have the same amount of heavy windup speed on both builds, but this one looks significantly quicker than this build. Swapping over to it. There's a big difference there. So Primed Fury actually makes these builds way more fluid. We just don't have the space to use it on this one because we need a faction mod. But if you do have Roar and you do have Wrathful Advance, man, it Like, this damage is ridiculous. There's not a thing in the game that could survive this. You go into one-shot Acolytes, one-shot Eximus, one-shot Demolists. They'll all die. And you know what the great part is? This isn't melee influence. This is just a melee being good with a really cool interaction that isn't, let me just fucking throw on electric and then just spam light attacks. Because even though that's very powerful, like, I can demonstrate right now. It isn't as fun. And like, that's the simplest way to put it. I'm kind of bored of this now. Like, oh my god, I just hit maximum damage on every enemy in a single swing. You saw that was like 5.8 million damage right there. But that's not fun. And Harmony with Afflictions actually is fun. One thing I will say is that you do want to use Ready Steel on pretty much any Warframe you are using this on, because it gives you just, you know, more initial combo, which is a higher multiplier to your heavy attack damage. But other than that, Harmony is disgusting, Melee Afflictions is even more disgusting, and when you combine the two together, you get what is easily the highest damaging melee in the entire game. I also forgot to mention that the weapon gives itself a passive 30% increase in status duration, which means that paired with Lasting Sting, you're dealing even more damage than you would expect here. It doesn't get much better than this, y'all. Enjoy the gameplay. I'll see you soon. Peace.